We were eating dinner the night she told me about her idea. I remember because I just pulled the chicken thighs off the grill and was halfway through my second course when she said it. Real casual. "I've been thinking," she said, not looking up from her plate. "I want to start something. A business. Something that helps women get financially free." I nodded like any decent husband would. She always had these little sparks of inspiration after a yoga class or a long walk. Most of them fizzled out in a few days, like that herb garden she swore would change our eating habits. But this one felt different. She looked me straight in the eye this time. "I mean it," she said. "I want to help women break out of the system. We're stuck in jobs that suck the life out of us. I want to teach them how to take their power back." She said it like it was a mission, not a product. I didn't fully understand what she meant by financially free, but I figured maybe it was coaching, budgeting, or something to do with online courses. I'd heard of people doing that. I asked her if she had a plan. She said it was still coming together, but she had a name already, Aura. I laughed a little at the name, thinking it sounded like a candle brand, but she didn't smile. She was serious. So I nodded and told her to go for it. I wanted to be supportive. I've been with her long enough to know she gets restless. She's always been the kind of woman who needed to believe in something bigger than herself. It used to be our marriage, our home, the little dog we rescued from a rainstorm and named Tucker. But in the past year or so, she'd started changing. The kind of change you can't see all at once, just little things. The books she read, the way she started talking about energy and intentions. Her clothes got looser, more flowing, and she stopped wearing shoes in the house, said she wanted to feel grounded. I didn't think much of it at first. We all change. I'd put on 15 pounds since the pandemic, started watching woodworking videos on YouTube like it was a religion. We get older. We find new hobbies. But then she started talking about bringing someone on to help her with the business. She called him a spiritual strategist. Said his name was Kai. "Kai's amazing," she told me one morning while drinking tea that smelled like boiled moss. "He understands the work we're doing. He's already helped me map out the entire first retreat." Retreat? That was the first time I'd heard of that. I thought she was doing online courses or something digital. She said they wanted to host wellness retreats where women could reclaim their abundance mindset. I asked where they'd host something like that. She said they'd found a cabin in Sedona. That's when the gut feeling started. I know what it feels like when someone's holding something back. She started smiling when she looked at her phone, but not the way she used to. She kept it close, even in the shower. Late at night, I'd hear the soft buzz of notifications, and her laugh, low, private, like someone whispering into a microphone too close. I saw his name on her screen once, Kai Solon. No last name in the contact. Just Kai, with the sun emoji. Still, I said nothing. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband who can't handle his wife working with another man. Maybe he really was just a business partner. Maybe I was overthinking it. I tried to let it go. I tried harder than I should have. A week later, she told me she was flying out to Arizona for a vision planning weekend with Kai. "We're going to align the retreat curriculum with the lunar cycle," she said, like that was a normal sentence. I asked if she was going alone. She hesitated. Said she'd be meeting him there. That was the moment. Not a big explosion, no screaming. Just a quiet click in my chest. Something shutting off. I told her I hoped it went well. I smiled and kissed her on the forehead. But I already knew. She wasn't starting a business. She was building an exit. From me. From our life. From everything we built together. And I just helped her pack the bags. A few days after she got back from Arizona, she sat me down in the kitchen. She had that important talk tone in her voice. Said she and Kai had come up with a plan to really scale Aura. She used words like foundational alignment, energy ecosystem, and financial sacred flow. It sounded like a lot of spiritual nonsense dressed up as a business plan, but I nodded like I understood. Then she said, "We're going to open a joint account for the business. Just to keep it separate and clean." I asked, "Separate from what?" "Just so it's not mixed in with our household stuff," she said quickly, like it was obvious. "This way we can track every dollar that goes in and out." "We?" I asked, and she smiled. "It'll still be us, but just with a dedicated place for the business side of things." I didn't love the idea, but I didn't argue. We'd been married almost 7 years by then. We'd always shared finances, had each other's passwords, used the same bank since before we had health insurance. So I figured a separate business account wasn't a big deal. I let her handle it. She was good with details, always kept our receipts neat and filed. If she said it was for organization, I believed her. The first red flag came in the form of an overdraft notification on an account I didn't even know I was tied to. I logged in and saw my name right there. Joined holder. The account was drained. Less than $30 and change. But the transfer history told the real story. Thousands had come in. And just as quickly, thousands had gone out. Most of it came from my paycheck. I confronted her that night, not angry, just confused. She waved it off, said it was temporary. Kai's doing all the back-end work, she said, and I had to pay for his systems package up front. Systems package? I asked. What is that? Like software? No, it's holistic. He's helping us align the internal structure with the energy of the business. I stared at her like she'd just asked the dog to do our taxes. She got defensive. You said you supported this, she reminded me. You said this was something important. And I had. But I hadn't agreed to funding their whole operation without being asked. After that, the expenses kept piling up. Every few days there was a new charge: plane tickets, cabin rentals, bulk orders of crystals, some $900 print job for sacred curriculum guides. I didn't even know what that meant. Meanwhile, she started traveling more. Retreat prep, she said. Sacred container building. Sometimes just alignment weekends. She never once invited me, not even as a tag-along. When I offered to help, she said it was women-only space. You wouldn't understand, she said. It's a healing circle. It has to be curated. Kai went on every trip. They hosted their first retreat in a rental house up in Oregon. I recognized the cabin from her Instagram. She tagged it Bliss Sanctuary. I looked it up out of curiosity. Turns out it was just a high-end Airbnb. Same one we almost booked for our 5th anniversary trip. Back then, she said it was too expensive. But now it was essential for the vibe. She came back glowing. Not in the way you glow after a good trip. It was deeper than that. She talked about Kai like he was some kind of visionary. Said he channeled the new group model in the hot tub after a breathwork session. The more she talked about him, the smaller I started to feel. She stopped asking about my work. She'd always been interested in my projects before, asked how the team was doing, brought me snacks when I worked late. That all disappeared. Now it was just or this, Kai that, retreat this, download that. She stopped wearing her wedding ring too. Said it blocked her energy flow during group meditations. I started pulling back, watching instead of participating. I'd make dinner and she'd eat in front of her laptop, on Zoom calls with women named Echo and Serafina. I'd go to bed alone and wake up to an empty pillow. I stopped asking where she went when she disappeared for hours. Eventually, I stopped asking anything at all. But I was watching. I started checking receipts, scraping through old emails. I didn't even know what I was looking for at first. I just had this feeling, like something behind the curtain didn't match the way she smiled when she talked about liberating women from financial shame. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about truth. And something told me I was the only one in that whole circle who didn't know the real story. First thing I did was get back into our old bank accounts. Not just the flashy one she'd opened for Aura-Rise, but everything, the credit unions, the savings accounts we hadn't touched since we were still renting. I went through PayPal, Stripe, Venmo, even her Etsy account, which I thought was for selling those little intention jars but turned out to be just another funnel for incoming cash. The pattern was pretty clear. Money would come in, often from women paying $88 or $222 for something vague like a shadow work audio journey, and then it'd go straight out again. Not to any real vendors either. Just names. Fake-sounding names. I started noticing they came in themes, like Celestial Coaching LLC and Third Eye Flow Group. None of them had a digital footprint older than 6 months. That's when I started looking up the LLCs. Most didn't even exist a year ago. Some weren't registered in any state at all. One was listed in Nevada, but the address traced back to a mailbox inside a UPS store. That one had gotten over $7,000. Every retreat had the same pattern: deposits, followed by payouts to guest speakers or energy consultants. I checked every live stream she'd hosted, no speakers, just her and Kai in front of some borrowed mandala tapestry, talking about rewriting your money story with sacred fire rituals. No workshops, no curriculum, nothing real. And then I found the binder. It was tucked in the hallway closet between an unopened box of Palo Santo and our old Christmas lights. Turquoise faux leather, with gold foil lettering, Abundance Ledger. I opened it and felt my stomach twist. Real receipts, signed checks, payout records, names I'd already Googled, some crossed out, some with doodles of suns next to them. One page had refund with love scribbled in purple marker over a bounced check. She'd made actual payments using our money to people who didn't exist, under a nonprofit status that hadn't even cleared its IRS paperwork. She'd even labeled expenses under Soul Repair Outreach and Empress Elevation Fund. I didn't know whether to laugh or throw up. That night, I didn't confront her. I made a sandwich and sat across from her while she edited an Instagram reel of herself smudging a workshop yurt with white sage. She wore a shawl and called herself a vessel for conscious commerce. I smiled and told her the video looked nice. Then I got to work. My strategy was simple. Isolate. Freeze. Move. First, I isolated everything that was mine alone. The condo deed, bought before we married, was already in my name, but I double-checked with the county clerk. My personal savings, which had mostly sat untouched, I transferred into a new high-security account at a local bank she'd never stepped foot in. I made sure the life insurance was locked down with two-factor authentication, and I put my retirement into a rollover IRA with no shared access. Then I froze everything with her name on it. The joint accounts, the shared credit cards, even the emergency fund she thought I wasn't watching. I shut them all down, took her name off where I could, and flagged every account that didn't allow that, so any movement would alert me instantly. Finally, I moved the assets she might still try to touch. The crypto wallet I toyed with back in 2020? Transferred it to cold storage, encrypted and sealed with a passphrase I didn't even write down. The Tesla? Registered it under my company's LLC and parked it at my brother's for a week. I also moved some stocks into a trust with a watchdog clause. Anything she tried to access would trigger a notification and a freeze. She didn't notice any of it. Too busy curating prosperity frequencies for her followers. I'd hear her on Zoom calls in the guest room, telling women they didn't need traditional wealth to live a rich life. Telling them to let go of shame, to tap into divine receivership, to stop outsourcing power to external structures. She was real convincing, too. People clapped for her, sent her money, left little heart emojis and queen in the comments. What they didn't know, what she didn't know, was that the structure holding her up was already hollow. I'd pulled the beams out quietly, one by one, and the whole thing was about to come crashing down. I booked the ticket without telling anyone. One way, middle seat, no check bag. Just to carry on with a folder, a change of clothes, and the kind of calm you only get when there's nothing left to lose. The retreat was in Taos this time. New Mexico. Real artsy town. Adobe houses, desert wind, overpriced candles. She'd mentioned it in passing 2 weeks earlier, said the location had ancestral resonance. I knew the place. We'd vacationed there years ago, back when we still shared coffee and conversations that didn't feel like interviews. I found the listing through her business page. It was an Airbnb with wide wooden beams, a stone fire pit, and a clay oven in the yard. She called it a goddess dwelling. Said the space itself was a teacher. I called it a rental. I arrived around noon on a Saturday. Clear sky, maybe 75 degrees. Rental car was a dusty Camry with a cracked rear view. I didn't care. I drove slow. No music. Just the sound of my thoughts scraping against each other like rusted metal. When I pulled up to the house, there were shoes on the porch. All different kinds, leather sandals, worn boots, something with beads on the straps. Someone had drawn a spiral on the front door in what looked like chalk. I stood there for a second, looked at the sky, took a breath. Then I walked in. The front door wasn't locked. Not sure if that was a New Mexico thing or just arrogance. Either way, I pushed it open and stepped into what looked like a yoga studio with throw pillows. The air smelled like citrus oil and incense. I heard soft music, flutes, wind chimes, some woman humming in a language that might have been made up. They were all in the back room. I heard laughter and voices, women, maybe 6 or 7 of them. And his, Kai's voice. Smooth, too smooth, like a motivational speaker doing breathwork. I walked through the kitchen and dropped the folder on the counter. The sound it made was enough to pull everyone out. She came into the kitchen first. Barefoot, wearing a robe like a desert priestess, her hair in a loose braid. Her face changed in 1 second, joy to confusion to dread. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes darted to the folder. She didn't ask what it was. She already knew. "What are you doing here?" she asked, voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. I didn't answer. I pulled out one of the documents, a payment trail showing 5-figure transfers from our account to Celestial Curriculum Collective, an LLC that vanished 3 weeks after it was created. I slid it across the counter. "This one's good," I said. But I think my favorite is the speaker who billed you twice in the same hour for 2 different sessions in 2 different states. Kai walked in behind her. Linen pants, smug as ever. That stupid beaded necklace hanging over his bare chest. He opened his mouth like he was about to say something, but I raised a finger without looking at him. Not your moment, I said. He stopped. The other women filtered in behind them, some still holding tea mugs. One was crying, though I don't think she knew why yet. Maybe she felt it. The shift in the air. Like when a storm's about to roll over the ridge and the birds go quiet. I came to give you this, I said, tapping the folder. It's got your transactions, the false vendors, the mismatched tax filings, the retreat expenditures that never lined up. Enough for a full audit. She leaned against the counter like her knees might quit. You don't understand, she whispered. I do, I said. That's the problem. For a long time, none of us spoke. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the wind outside brushing against the adobe walls. Then I took out the last page. The letter. Addressed to the IRS Fraud Division and signed. I slid that across the counter too. I haven't sent it yet, I said. But you've got about 24 hours before I do. Her lips trembled. Not from sadness, fear. Real, honest fear. The kind that comes when the fantasy finally hits a wall that doesn't move. This was never about hurting you, she said, almost pleading. You did that part anyway, I said. Now we're just settling accounts. I turned to leave, but paused in the doorway. Looked at the group. Some were staring at the floor. One held her phone like she wasn't sure whether to film or cry. You ladies might want to ask about where your money went, I said. Might want to ask where she found Kai, too. And then I left. No shouting. No fight. Just walked out the same door I came in. The sun was still shining. Birds still chirping. But behind me, the whole house had gone silent. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. The night before I flew out, I did something I never thought I'd do. I set up a burner Instagram account. No name. No face. Just one post, or a rise, behind the veil. I didn't have a plan at first, but somewhere in my gut, I knew I needed to document what was coming. Not for fame. Not even to ruin her. Just to make sure the truth didn't vanish into her little world of hashtags and dream catchers. Turns out, setting up a live stream's easier than you'd think. I clipped a phone stand to the strap of my bag and synced it to the new account. Camera pointed chest high, stable and steady. I'd already typed the caption before I walked in. Truth isn't a frequency. It's a receipt. So while she stood there, barefoot and panicked, and Kai tried to remember how to breathe without looking smug, the live stream was already rolling. Thousands of people saw her face fall when she opened that folder. Thousands more heard her say, "You don't understand." And most important, every woman at that retreat saw it too. They'd gathered around slowly, women in shawls and long skirts, holding herbal teas and notebooks full of abundance affirmations. I looked each of them in the eye. No anger. Just the kind of steady truth that can't be repackaged as growth. This retreat you paid for? I said. It's built on a house of cards. She used fake names, false vendors, phony LLCs. Most of your money went straight into a personal account shared with this guy. I pointed at Kai. He opened his mouth like he might explain something, but I cut him off. She told you she was channeling prosperity. What she didn't say was she funneled every dime through paper-thin companies that vanish before tax season. There's no bookkeeping, no transparency, just your trust and a whole lot of bad math. A woman with a silver braid asked, but what about the donation receipts? I wrote off the last retreat on my taxes. I nodded. Yeah, so did 26 others. Problem is, the nonprofit status isn't legal. They're under review. You might want to talk to your accountant. Gasps. Real ones. Like the sound of glass finally falling after the crack. The comments on the live stream started piling up. People who knew her. Former clients. A few who'd apparently suspected something but couldn't prove it. One woman typed, "This makes sense now. She ghosted me after I asked for an invoice." Another said, "I paid $1,200 for a private money clearing and never got anything." The video kept going. I made sure of that. I walked through the house, steady, narrating. Pointed out the vision boards with missing receipts. The so-called guest speaker packets that were just Google Docs with copy-pasted quotes. And then, for good measure, I read aloud the check written to Solar Spiral Ventures, a company that doesn't exist in any state registry. I showed the printed bank statement. I circled the entry with a Sharpie. Kai tried to interrupt again. "This is an invasion of privacy," he said, arms crossed, trying to reclaim some kind of authority. "Privacy?" I said. You mean the same privacy you violated by running a fake charity and billing vulnerable women under false pretenses? He didn't answer. Just stood there, quiet now, his hands shaking slightly. My ex, she wasn't crying. She'd moved past panic into that numb place people go when the dam breaks. She kept whispering, it wasn't supposed to be like this. Like that would fix anything. Eventually, the women started asking questions. Real questions. Not about chakras or intentions, but numbers, legal names, refunds. And I just stood back and let them talk. The live viewer count passed 10,000. That's when I ended it. I stepped back to the kitchen, held the camera up to my face, and said one sentence, your frequency doesn't cancel out federal law. Then I tapped, and left. It posted automatically. Within minutes, it was screen recorded, reposted, tagged, and mirrored. People started sharing it across every platform imaginable. A truth that big doesn't stay quiet, not even in a world of filters and curated light. I left the house without a word. Didn't slam the door. Didn't look back. I'd already said everything I needed to say. And this time, the whole damn world heard it. A week after Taos, he reached out. It came through email first. A short message, no subject line. Just, hey man, I think we should talk. No hard feelings. Let's meet. No hard feelings. It took me a few minutes just to laugh. I read it again, not because I didn't understand, but because I wanted to be sure that's what he thought would work. After everything, after the lies, the bank account, the fake nonprofits, he thought I wanted to talk. I replied 2 hours later. Told him I'd meet him. Neutral ground, I wrote. A place where we both speak the same language. I chose a boxing gym downtown. One of those old-school joints tucked between a laundromat and a used tire shop. Smelled like liniment and concrete. The owner, Marty, knew me from way back. I hadn't sparred in a year or two, but I still stopped by sometimes to hit the heavy bag and clear my head. I let Marty know I was bringing a guest. When Kai walked in that Thursday afternoon, he looked exactly how I expected. Still trying to do that effortless thing, linen joggers, wrist beads, a faded hoodie like he was about to run a breathwork seminar instead of step into a ring. He looked around like he couldn't quite figure out why the place didn't have air purifiers. Hey, he said, trying a smile. I nodded once. Thanks for coming. He followed me past the old lockers and the taped-up posters. I handed him a set of gloves and gestured toward the ring. His smile faded just a little. Wait, he said, you wanna spar? Talk and move, I said. Sometimes the body hears better than words. He hesitated. I could see it, the flicker of hesitation in his eyes, like a man who's said yes to something out of habit and is only now realizing the terms. But pride's a hell of a leash, especially for a guy like him. So he put on the gloves and followed me up the steps. We touched gloves once. No crowd. Just Marty, leaning on the ropes with a stopwatch, chewing a toothpick like it owed him money. First round, I kept it slow. Light jabs. Footwork. Gave him a false sense of control. He bounced around a little too much, like he thought this was cardio. You really think I didn't see through you? I asked mid-round. He blinked. I didn't come here for a fight. Then you should have picked a better woman to con. He threw a punch awkward, all wrist, no weight. I slipped it easy, tapped his ribs with a hook that didn't fully commit. Just a warning. A message. Look, he huffed. She believed in what we were doing. You believed in stealing. You wrapped it in incense and sacred words, but it's the same old grift. He came in again, sloppier this time. I waited. Let him swing. Then I countered. Right hook to the body. Then a clean jab to the sternum. He staggered. You know what the difference is between us? I said, circling. I build things. You drift in, drain the power, and vanish. Another shot. Left hook under his elbow. He gasped. I pressed forward. Didn't yell. Didn't even breathe hard. Just worked him. A rib shot. Then another. His guard crumbled like cheap drywall. By the end of the second round, he was curled near the ropes, one glove against his side, the other limp. I stood over him, breathing steady. My gloves still up. 2 cracked ribs, Marty muttered from outside the ring, barely looking up. He'll feel that every time he laughs for the next month. Kai wheezed something about being done. I stepped back. Let him sit there with his thoughts. He didn't look so enlightened anymore. Just a man who thought words would save him from consequences and found out fists still speak. You said no hard feelings, I reminded him. Now you know how wrong you were. He didn't reply. I unlaced my gloves, walked to the locker room, and washed up in silence. No celebration. No gloating. Just peace, The kind of quiet that only comes when your hands have said what your heart can't anymore. Before I left, I handed Marty a folded envelope. "For the cleanup," I said. He nodded. "I'll keep the lights on." As I stepped out into the cold air, the city felt quieter, lighter. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel better. But I felt finished. When the reports hit, it wasn't a crash. It was slower than that, like watching a building collapse one support beam at a time. She didn't even know the first one had snapped until the dust started rising. The nonprofit status went first. One of the women from the retreat, turns out she worked for a compliance firm in Colorado, flagged the inconsistencies in the filings. Sent it up the chain. I didn't even know she'd done it until weeks later when the letter from the IRS showed up addressed to Aurorize. After that, it spread fast. The IRS launched a formal investigation. At first, she acted like it was a misunderstanding, told her followers that this kind of scrutiny is just part of growing as a visionary leader. She posted a video of herself smudging her laptop and talking about how money is an illusion anyway. But the IRS doesn't care about illusions, or vibes, or lunar alignment. They cared about unreported income, false deductions, and how a supposed nonprofit had somehow routed over $280,000 in healing donations through shell accounts registered in 3 different states. Next came the state attorney's office. They got wind of it once the nonprofit status was pulled and someone, maybe one of the women who'd tried to get a refund, filed a fraud complaint. They froze the business accounts. Not that there was much left to freeze. She'd moved most of it through Kai's accounts by then. But the paper trail was long and messy, and they were hungry. That's when I saw real fear in her face. She called me. Once. It was late. I didn't pick up. The voicemail was all shaky voice and half-finished sentences. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she said. "They don't understand what we were trying to do." She tried to lean on the same language she used in her workshops. Talked about intention, about healing, about being misunderstood. But the state investigator wasn't buying any of it. And neither was the forensic accountant they brought in. He tore her business apart in under 2 weeks. Proved that multiple retreats were funded entirely by private donations marked as tax-deductible when they weren't. Found invoices for services that were never rendered, speaker fees paid to Kai under different business names, and travel expenses labeled as emergency soul restoration. Kai tried to play the calm one during his deposition. Wore a button-down shirt, kept his hair tied back, tried to sit upright like he belonged in a boardroom instead of a yurt. It didn't work. His paperwork was sloppy. His story shifted every time they asked him about where the money went. By the end of it, they were both charged: wire fraud, conspiracy to commit tax evasion, and misuse of nonprofit funds. She tried to plead it down. Offered to refund some of the women. Claimed she had no idea about the tax implications. Said Kai handled all of that. Kai, in turn, tried to pin it back on her. Neither one of them had clean hands, and the court knew it. The divorce finalized right as the hammer came down. I'd filed months before, but things moved slow until the live stream. Once that went viral, the judge fast-tracked everything. I walked into the courtroom with a folder full of documentation and walked out with everything that mattered. The house, the car, the business accounts she hadn't already bled dry. Full control over every asset we once shared. And maybe most satisfying of all, her name scrubbed clean off anything that had to do with my future. Legally, financially, spiritually, practically, she no longer existed in my books. She left with a suitcase, a suspended bank account, and a court date. No spousal support. No stake in the equity I'd built before she ever dreamed of sacred currencies or liberation coaching. She didn't even ask to keep the dog. Maybe because she knew he'd growl at her now. She moved back in with her parents in Indiana. I didn't know that right away. I found out from her sister, who messaged me on Facebook a month later and said, "For what it's worth, I always knew she was full of it." I didn't reply. The thing is, I didn't feel joy when it was over. Not the kind people expect. I felt clean. Like I'd walked out of a burning house and stood barefoot in the dirt, coughing up soot but finally breathing real air again. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about release. And when I shut the door on that chapter, I locked it for good. Last I heard, she cut her hair short, chin length, all blunt edges and dyed copper, and started calling herself Rhea Moon. Said it was her rebirth name. Like shaving off half her identity and adding a soft vowel at the end would undo the last 2 years. Like the fraud didn't count if she rebranded. She moved back in with her parents in southern Indiana. Little town called Martinsville. We drove through it once, years ago, on the way to Brown County for a weekend. She'd rolled her eyes at it back then, called it stuck in time. Now she was stuck there, too. Full circle, I guess. From what I gathered through back channels, and one very detailed message from an old client of hers, she and Kai tried to start over. A new platform, different logo. They called it Sunroot Collective and said it was built on reclamation, not capitalism. He filmed some grainy videos in front of her parents' garage, talking about spiritual decentralization and wealth healing through shadow resonance. They slapped a donation button on the website and started posting again, mostly recycled quotes and blurry nature shots from the woods behind her parents' fence. The whole thing never made it past the link in bio phase. No clients, no traction, not even a launch retreat. Just a PDF and a dream nobody believed in anymore. The plea deal came down mid-fall, just after the leaves turned. 5 years of probation, 1,200 hours of community service, and a lifetime ban from managing any registered nonprofit or holding a fiduciary role in any business entity. That last one hit her hard, I think. Being told she could never again hold sacred stewardship over collective wealth, as she once called it. No board seats, no financial decisions, nothing she could brand as leadership. Their empire? Vaporized. The Instagram was deactivated. The YouTube channel scrubbed. Her old clients asked for refunds or started their own small groups in its wake. Some women got angry. Some just moved on. But the trust she once carried like a lantern was gone for good. People remembered. And in her line of work, reputation is everything. As for Kai, last I saw, he was working at a co-op in Bloomington, stocking shelves. His beads still around his wrist, but the light in his eyes gone dull. No more live streams. No more downloads. Just a guy stacking boxes in a building full of fluorescent lights and organic crackers. And me? I disappeared. Not in the dramatic, fake my death way. Just quiet. Intentional. I filed the paperwork, changed my name, nothing fancy, just enough to step sideways from the mess. Got a new number. New city. Different climate. I don't use social media anymore. No posts. No followers. No curated piece. I live in an apartment above a jazz bar. It's an old place with wood floors that creak and radiators that hiss in the winter. The bar downstairs plays live music 4 nights a week. Nothing loud, just saxophones and upright bass and the occasional trumpet. I've grown to like it. It's like the building breathes a little. Got a dog, too. Black Lab, name's Tank. Found him at a rescue. Big paws, always hungry, never complains. We walk in the mornings before the city wakes up, just us and the garbage trucks and the fog off the river. I don't explain myself to anyone these days. Don't need to. The barista downstairs knows I like my coffee black. The landlord leaves me alone. The people in the building nod in the hallway but never ask questions. It's good. It's real. I sleep like a man who isn't being lied to anymore. No more voices behind doors. No more whispers into phone screens. No more half-truths dressed up in spiritual language. Sometimes I think about the moment it all ended. That last day in the lawyer's office, divorce papers laid out like a menu neither of us wanted to read. She didn't cry. I didn't either. We just signed and sat in the silence. She stood to leave, but I stopped her. Pulled the last page from my folder, the one that had the final signatures. I handed it to her without ceremony. She looked at me like she was waiting for something. A line. A blessing. Maybe forgiveness. What she got instead were 6 words. Now you're free. Financially and otherwise. Then I turned and walked out the door. And I haven't looked back since. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think spiritual movements like this attract more good people or manipulators? If you like the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.